Everyone, my name is Alexandra Rodriguez, and I'm going to talk about Puerto Rico. So a little introduction about Puerto Rico is when Columbus arrived, the actual island was called San Juan Bautista, but then as they discovered the gold in the river, they called it Puerto Rico, which means rich port. In 1898, Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory through the Spanish-American War. And then Puerto Ricans were granted U.S. citizenship in 1917. They were given the right to elect their governor through popular vote in 1948. And before this, the United States will elect a governor for them. Puerto Rico officially became a U.S. Commonwealth in 1952. So these are some quick facts. In 93.5% of the total population in Puerto Rico lives in urban areas. 93.3% of the population can read. The population is approximately 3,351,827. This is from the latest estimates from July 2017. And life expectancy is 18.9 years. As well as this, Spanish and English are official languages, and the currency is the U.S. dollar. Even though Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, they cannot vote for the U.S. president, and they only have a representative in Congress, but that person cannot vote as well. They can only speak on behalf of the island. Other than that, the debt is approximately $73 billion. June 2015, Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla announced that the island could not pay back this amount of debt, and it will have to seek a deal with its creditors. The United States makes an approximate of $71.6 billion out of Puerto Rico, while Puerto Rico only receives $4.6 billion from the United States. There's a huge amount of difference between the two, and there's a lot of controversy behind this because a lot of people think that Puerto Ricans depend a lot on the United States, when in reality, the United States receives a lot of money from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico currently, on September 2017, Hurricane Maria struck the island. It caused a lot of catastrophic damage. The whole island was without power. Most of Puerto Ricans were without water as well. And the damage is estimated to be tens of billions of dollars. 68 days after Maria, 58% of the island has power. But that doesn't mean that everyone in those 58% is generating power. That just means that they have electricity, but because some cables are still without proper work and stuff like that, they really do not. Some of them still don't have power. So even though it's 58%, that doesn't mean that 58% of the population is having electricity at home right now. 91% of the people have water, but there's still a boil advisory in effect, and 1,135 people remain in shelters. After the hurricane, approximately 100,000 Puerto Ricans have left the island. Most of them have gone to Florida, and most of these people come to the United States without a plan or without knowing what they're going to do next, but that was their only choice because their homes were literally destroyed by the hurricane. Now I'm going to talk about my 3 topics, and these 3 topics are the topics that I've talked about in my case studies, and they kind of relate to what has been happening in Puerto Rico for now. So the first topic is the independence movements in Puerto Rico. After Puerto Rico was ceded to the United States, Manuel Zeno Gandia and Eugenio Maria de Hostos went to Washington, D.C. and proposed the idea of giving Puerto Rico the independence. But obviously they were denied, and after that they actually made Puerto Rico the Commonwealth. There has been a lot of independence movements in Puerto Rico ever since Columbus came, because the last time it was free was basically when the Taínos were there. Pedro Albizu Campos and Filiberto Ojeda are 2 of the most important people in the history of independence movements in Puerto Rico. So Pedro Albizu Campos was in charge of the Partido Nacional, and he, compared to his predecessors, he opted for a more violent way and to ask for the independence of Puerto Rico. In 1934, he led an island-wide agriculture strike, and this is when the United States paid more attention to him. Before that, he wasn't really known for them. The policemen and the FBI started following Albizu Campos all over the island. They watched his home, intercepted his mail, interrogated his neighbors, and arrested members of his national party. On October 24, 1935, an army of Winship's, which was the governor at the time, policemen raided a student rally and killed 4 people, including the treasurer of the Nationalist Party, all in the broad daylight in front of witnesses. This became known as the Rio Piedras Massacre. Some of the U.S. tactics that they use, they tap in all independence movements, was to tap people's phones, develop secret FBI files. For Avisos, they had a file that had 20,000 pages, and it was just 1 year. They interrogated anyone that came to visit Avisos, and FBI followed Avisos everywhere. And they started developing what they would call carpetas, which was secret FBI files about the people who have been organizing or being involved in independence movements. And I actually know a few people who have their grandfathers or their parents had carpetas, and basically just gives every detail of them, they were being followed and what they were saying and what they were doing and how they were working and stuff like that. The October 1915 revolution was in October 30th, and that's when the National Party waged a revolution against the United States. Police stations were being burned down. There was gunfights roared in 8 towns, and the Republic of Puerto Rico was declared in the town of Jayuya. So basically, they declared the Republic of Puerto Rico. And assassination attempts were made against President Harry Truman and Governor Luis Muñoz Marin. In order to suppress this revolt, the United States bombed 2 towns, mobilized 5,000 National Guardsmen, killed dozens of nationalists, and arrested 3,000 Puerto Ricans. Albizu Campos was arrested in jail in La Princesa. Then for Filiberto Ojeda, which was the second one, he first came to the public light in 1960s when he was accused of planting a bomb in a hotel as part of a clandestine movement. After this, he was arrested, and before he actually got arrested, he escaped to Cuba knowing he was not going to get a fair trial. In this moment, a lot of people who were involved in the independence movement were not getting fair trials. They were using a lot of Cold War tactics. So he knew that he was not going to be able to be free, even though he supposedly wasn't guilty of it. When he came back to Puerto Rico, he created the Macheteros. The Macheteros it came out of a movement of a series of attacks. When Ojeda won his case in 1989, the FBI asked Judge Vargas de Cerezo to arrest him as a flight risk. After that, Filiberto Ojeda lived 15 years clandestinely. He was free. He was still mobilizing and stuff like that, but he was kind of under wraps. And then the FBI killed Filiberto Ojeda in his house and with open fire on September 23, 2005. This is kind of very significant because not only the FBI killed him, they shot without any cause because he didn't fight back. He died. He was also 72 years at the time, and this was also September 23, 2005 is also the anniversary of the Grito de Lares, which is a historic day commemorating the Puerto Rican anti-colonial uprising against Spanish rule. Moving on, I'm also going to talk about Judge Jones Act. So the Merchant Marine Act of 1920, commonly known as the Jones Act, is the United States federal statute that provides for the promotion and maintenance of the American merchant marine. The cabotage provisions relating to the Jones Act restrict the carriage of goods or passengers between the United States ports to the U.S.-built flag vessels. So you may ask yourself, what is this? Why is the Jones Act affect, or how does it affect Puerto Ricans? Well, basic shipments of goods from the island to the United States and vice versa must be conducted via expensive protected ships rather than exposing them to global competition. That makes everything the Puerto Ricans buy unnecessarily expensive relatively to goods purchased on either the U.S. mainland or other Caribbean islands. It drives up the cost of living in the island overall. Food in Puerto Rico costs twice as much as it does in Florida, and it's just because of the Jones Act. So the Jones Act is very important because it also affected Puerto Ricans recently because of after the Hurricane Maria. So the Jones Act made the process of getting help to Puerto Rico a lot slower, and it also made it a lot difficult because they had to wait for the ships to come in and out. But also a lot of countries wanted to help out, but Puerto Rico couldn't receive the help from them. They have to if they wanted to send stuff to Puerto Rico, they had to use the U.S. Marine as well. They cannot just like send like a shipment of stuff and then it will get to Puerto Rico and they will receive it. Like, that was not the case. So because of this, a lot of people pushed the Trump administration to lift the Jones Act, and it took a lot of people to actually push it for them to actually lift it. But he didn't lift it for that long. So I think it was like probably like 2 or 3 weeks, and after that, like, he didn't like try to like wave it back, even though a lot of people asked for it to be extended. So this is one of the main results of why like help in Puerto Rico became a lot slower, and everything was like more slower than it should have been. And has actually been like different senators have proposed several times, including John McCain, to lift the Jones Act or to redeem it to help Puerto Ricans, because at the end of the day, it's affecting a lot of Puerto Ricans because right now they don't even have the economy is even worse than it used to be. And talking about the U.S. Marine, we're also going to talk about the U.S. Navy in Vieques, actually. So during the 1940s, the U.S. Navy took over 60% of Vieques, and Vieques is one of the islands of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico actually has like a few islands. So this is one of the smaller one of the islands that Puerto Rico has. The U.S. Navy in Vieques, after they took over, this changed the economy from agriculture to construction. So a lot of people who were there, they were actually like, they started building U.S. Fields and U.S. Navy buildings, and so a lot of people came to the Vieques to look for jobs of construction, and a lot of people who were focusing on agriculture had to look for jobs somewhere else because there was no jobs for them in Vieques anymore. For over 60 years, the island of Vieques was shelled continuously with tens of thousands of bombs and toxic chemicals every year. This also caused a lot of loitering and rapes in the villages. In Vieques, there's a lot of stories about people who used to live in Vieques who like drunk men will come and they will rape a woman, and they will have to be careful. So a lot of families will had to put shutters and not go outside from different times of the day. The contamination included long lists of heavy metals that are known as carcinogens, such as mercury, lead, and depleted uranium. So these were actually contaminated the island. So the people, even still, they had, the U.S. Navy had 60% of Vieques. There were still people living there, and they were exposed to these metals and gunpowder, and every single bombing exercises that they had, they were exposed to those. The history change with the U.S. Navy in Vieques was after the death of David Sanes. He actually died in April 1999. Thousands of citizens peacefully protested the U.S. Navy military exercises and were imprisoned. Sanes was killed when 2 bombs landed 100 yards from a clearly identified hilltop observation post where he was working. After a lot of protests going to the United States Supreme Court, because they actually went there, the U.S. stopped bombing in Vieques on May 1st, 2003. It was actually almost 60 years of this bombing and taking over Vieques. In 2005, Vieques was declared a Superfund site by the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. And the Superfund site basically means that it's a toxic dump. Over a third of the island's population of 9,000 are now suffering from a range of cancer and other illnesses. The cancer rate is reportedly about 25% higher in Vieques compared to the main portion of Puerto Rico. So in conclusion, the United States will never care about Puerto Rico, and will never care about Puerto Ricans. This is actually one of the images that I used in one of my case studies, especially the U.S. Navy case study. And in the background, you can see how people are protesting for it, and how the pictures of the U.S. military and the dump and everything. And basically, it shows that the only reason why the United States wants Puerto Rico is because to gain money and to use it, but they don't really care about Puerto Ricans. The statehood status of the island has brought a lot of negative effects, which we can see with the 3 topics that I've talked about. And there's people who have tried to break the status quo, and people who are actually been fighting for the independence and been fighting for the oppression that the United States has had in Puerto Rico. People can vote. People can vote for a president, the person who's basically in charge of if they want to lift the ban or they don't want to lift the ban. Basically, Puerto Rico is like still a colony and has been for so many years, and it's time for it to change. That is my presentation for today, and I hope everybody has a good day.